The session this morning for the rapid testing and automation for foodborne pathogens. And we are living in a rapid changing world now, and there's a lot of things you need rapid, sensitive, and very specific for pathogen. Today we're going to have 8 distinguished speakers talk about their technology to share with us about how they use to in the microbial testing world. So this morning, I will have Dr. Vivian Wu with me, and both of us will share this session. And without further introduction, and I'll ask Dr. Wu to introduce our speakers for the first session. All right, thanks.
Do you have any other questions? No? Okay, we can save the rest of questions during the Q&A session. Okay, thank you so much, Marita. All right, so the third speaker of this morning, it's our pleasure to introduce Mr. Mohammed Ahmed. All right, great. He is a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt with in-depth knowledge of microbiology, including lab instrumentation, and over 15 years of experience in applying Lean and Six Sigma methodology in processing and performance improvement. And his area of expertise is Lean Enterprise and Six Sigma Kaizen, advanced statistical technology, for example, SPC, MSA, and DOE, business processing management, business analysis, project management, and facilitation skill. So Mohammed is a chartered chemist and holds a MS degree in chemistry. So let's welcome his talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Most of you heard the word Kaizen. Anyone familiar with the word Kaizen here? Very good. Kaizen means continuous improvement. Japanese, comes from Toyota. Yes. You know what? This morning, the first two presentations from Marita and Huang have kind of created a segue to my topic, which is lab optimization and lab consultancy, workflow-related optimization and streamlining of the laboratory operations. So, in the first two presentations, we heard about workflow, we heard about productivity, we heard about reliability, robust. Huang talked about instrumentation. So moving forward, I think this all together ties up together, and we will move ahead, and it'll all kind of make sense once I finish up the presentation with a beautiful case study. By the way, I have been employed by bioMérieux and working with bioMérieux for the past 8 years. I have done hundreds of lean lab assessments, especially in the industry, both for reference labs as well as production labs. Helping lab operations, especially the directors, supervisors, and managers, improve efficiency as well as effectiveness in laboratory environment. So this is the case study that I will be talking about today. As you see, here is a summary of what we will be talking about for the next 20 or 25 minutes. For this particular lab, this lab is a high throughput lab based out of Brazil. And as you can see, after the laboratory managers, they implemented our suggested solutions, they were able to see almost 143% increase in productivity, 41% flexibility to demand increase, which is like they had an initial request for forecast, which they were able to meet, but the way they were able to meet the forecast was not by hiring more people, but having the same amount of people and doing more with less. Even operational costs were reduced by about 50%. So those are the numbers, and I'm not just putting out these numbers here. We have valid data, we have the statistical reports and proper metrics that have been calculated before and after the assessment. End of the day, in order to meet the desired productivity level. But are they efficient? This is where workflow optimization and streamlining comes in place. Efficiency is ensuring that our people, our staff are working the right things, they're doing the right things in the right manner, at the right time, for the right purpose. So it's all right. That's when things kind of get aligned. And that's when our people work smarter, not harder. What today is happening is, yes, our labs are effective, and this is on a global level I'm talking about. I have done consulting work all the way from North America, South America, Europe, India, Asia Pacific as well. So looking at, it's not culture specific, it's not geographic specific, it's a global pattern that I have observed working across the globe. Our labs are effective, they are not efficient. But how do we make our labs more efficient? And this is where the Lean and Six Sigma methodology comes in. It's an internationally recognized methodology used by a lot of manufacturing companies. But over the past 10 years, the shift has been a lot of service industries, especially laboratories, not only in the industry side, but on the medical side. Banks, insurance, hospitals, a lot of the companies are using this methodology. And what this methodology specifically talks about is there are two types of activities that happen, on a very, very high level. There's value-added activity, which everyone knows, what our customers are willing to pay. If you're working for research, it is basically the value-added things like, okay, what kind of inputs you have and what are the desired outputs that are you're giving to your customer. Those are the value-added activities. The non-value-added activities, which I will talk about in a minute, are the not required activities that should be eliminated from our process. Specific examples of non-value-added activities are extra walking, extra transportation, even waiting. How many times I have seen, I just walk into the lab, I do the observations, I'm standing there, I see people just waiting for samples to receive, or waiting for an approval to be released in an email format. And waste doesn't need to be tangible or visible. It could be invisible. Let's say that we are working on the administrative side. How many emails do we have on a regular basis that we don't have enough time to go through? Those emails are our customers who are actually waiting for a response. That's a non-value-added activity that should be eliminated. We need to streamline even our internal processes to ensure that we are meeting the desired results. The only way we can achieve that is by eliminating non-value-added activities from our daily workload. It doesn't really apply on our professional lives, but this could be directly applied even in our personal lives that existed in their process. The process standardization, the workflow optimization, they also wanted to improve traceability when it comes to meeting compliance like ISO 17025, and from a manufacturing perspective, ISO 9001. They wanted to meet and exceed the guidelines requirements. So we went in, the first step was to gather enough data, and this is where we need to start somewhere. And the best place to start is the current state. What exactly is happening today before we provide our customers with the right suggestions and recommendations. So we gathered a lot of data, working together with the supervisor, with the manager. This is like offline. We don't really need to be on site collecting all the observations. We just send in an Excel sheet and the supervisor and manager work on collecting all the information. We set up some WebEx, and then once the data is received, we do all the analysis offline again so that we know what kind of trends and patterns exist in the current operations, your current state. For example, in this specific situation, the salmonella, as you look, that was like about 26% of the volume was for the salmonella testing, followed by aerobic mesophil, which is like 22%. So those two immediately kind of jumps out. 40% of the samples received at this particular lab are Salmonella and aerobic mesophil. So what this means is any improvement project should be highlighted or should be run towards, improving these two processes. Instead of looking the whole portfolio, instead of looking all the trivial cases, whatever other methods are existing out there, even if this lab focuses on these two methods or these two processes of testing, I think they'll be in good hands to move towards an effective and efficient laboratory. We also analyzed turnaround time data for them. We looked the working hours, their current FTE. We created some models to see if there are differences between how their staffing is scheduled and how the sample arrival pattern looks like. Are the staffing aligned with the sample receiving time? Sometimes mostly what I have noticed is, and not naming the labs, a lot of the lab staffs are present early during the day, whereas the samples arrive in the afternoon. So the samples and staff are not aligned here. And what happens is when the people leave, a lot of the samples are just sitting there without going into the incubation, which happens, that increases the turnaround time. So you need to ensure that all these things are aligned and properly in place, so you have a more effective operations. And pictures speak a lot, so I'm going to just quickly run through these slides over here. As you can see, a lot of manual activities were happening. Let's start with media culture. This is their media culture preparation over here. A lot of admin work happening, excess of manual transcription was happening. Everything was very, very manual when it comes to media preparation. This is their reception and sample info record. As you can see the pictures, a lot of duplication was happening. This lab had a LIMS system in place, the Laboratory Information Management System. But the duplication was happening is first they documented everything when the samples were received on paper. And then end of the day, there was one technician who was spending hour and a half just duplicating the admin work into the LIMS system. I mean, they could have just entered it straight away into the LIMS and an hour and a half could have straight away saved. So these are minor things that can be, picked only by observations. Altogether, we spent around 4 to 5 days at this lab doing the observations when we really went in. This is their sample preparation. Again, very, very manual. You see this red arrow over here? There was a lot of movement happening. The preparation was done over here, the instrument was here. So every time for each and every sample, the person was moving taking about 10 steps, going to that instrumentation. 10 steps one time, 10 steps returning back. Now, if you do 100 samples, just think about the time that's, that could be eliminated. Common sense, just move the instrument close by. It's not that there's some science attached, but you have to, again, it really comes down to applying common sense. Incubation as well, the Petri films were put in the incubator, but there was no labels attached when the Petri films were introduced or when the plates were introduced. If you could have a set schedule, what time the plates were introduced, then it's much easier for the second day to have maybe a batch process and come up with 3 or 4 layers or batches. That way you'll have a continuous process in place and you can have one person reading. I talked about, remember the value-added, non-value-added activities? I spent some time in the beginning. This is where the non-value-added stuff can be eliminated, and the whole idea here is you should only focus on your value-added activities in order for your lab operations to improve. Processing, the #1 waste that exists in micro labs. By over-processing, I mean is, a good example is, if a calibration is required only 2 times, I have seen people doing it 5 times, 6 times. That is over-processing, which should be eliminated. Even, I'm pretty sure you're trying to meet compliance, but the compliance are just guidelines. You talk about 17005 or 9001, they are just guidelines there. If you are able to meet your internal requirements, that ensure that calibration is brought down. Keep doing. Add new procedures and technology. Look what's available out there. I mean, just today we had 2 good presentations this morning about automation. bioMérieux has some good automation out there available. Balance in regards to cost quality and turnaround time. There should be always a balance achieved, and this is very, very important. If the balance is not there, then you will see some consequential metrics, kind of not being aligned. And do more. This is very, very important. Align the staff. Please, please. So many times I have seen in many labs, the staff are not aligned properly. So look at your sample receiving pattern and align your staff. Read multiple batches, have smaller batches. It's not about continuous flow. I know Lean talks about continuous flow, but when it comes to laboratory environments, batching is good. I kind of, I always tell my customer, go for batching, but go for small batches. Cross-training, very, very important again, to ensure that you have a proper and dedicated staff to test a variety of tests. And last thing, this is my last slide. I know I'm very close to my ending session here. Management buy-in is very, very critical. Please, if you have a CEO, if you have the director, go talk to them. And even if you're a CEO, when you go back, it all starts from the upper level. I mean, yes, our workstation needs to be organized, but unless and until there is management buy-in, nothing will happen at that workstation. Go and see for yourself. Believe me, all major decisions doesn't happen in the meeting room. You have to go there, you have to observe, you have to see what's happening. That's when true decisions could be made. And just do it. Don't wait until you're perfect. If you're going to wait until you're perfect, nothing's going to move. If you have a plan, if you have a good idea, if someone comes up and says, hey, I have an idea, talk to him, see what he has, because our people are the best people who know the work instruction and the SOPs better than our as managers. And last thing is, it's all about respect for people. If you're not respecting for people, I mean, ultimately, whether it's improvement, whether it's Lean, whether it's Six Sigma, whatever you talk about, if you are not doing it for the sake of your people, then it doesn't make sense. So it's all about people. It's about how we make our people more smarter and not ensure that they are working harder. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. So we have 1 minute, but we do have 10 minutes after this talk for Q&A. So I guess we can start with questions if the audience has. Yes, please. And can you check? Excuse me, can you bring the microphone over there? Thank you.
Thank you for an interesting talk. I saw that you were mainly basing this here on your observation. Are you also collecting suggestions from the staff there? They would probably they know their work. They probably also know where they're wasting the time.
I love it.
Yeah, it's working.
I love your question because that's what I do. I go there, I stand at the workstation, and as a consultant, no matter how good suggestions I give, what I really want is the ultimate suggestion and solution should come from the people who work, not from me. So I kind of facilitate. My job is facilitation, but I really want the solution to come from the people who work at the place. And this is the beauty of Kaizen. Kaizen, continuous improvement, is get the ideas from the people who actually do the work. And those are your best ideas. Whether small, whether big. I mean, for big ideas, yes, we may need some approvals, we may need some resources, but they have many small ideas, believe me. If we just go and talk to them, they'll come up with 100 ideas how to improve their world and their work. And we all need to do is just give them the approval to start implementing an experimentation. I'm not going to take this time, but I was doing one workshop, and end of the day, I had one person who was sitting very quiet. Everyone was involved in this workstation, but this one person was very, very quiet for the 6 hours that I was facilitating this workshop. It was a continuous improvement workshop for a big laboratory environment lab in US. So I went to this person, I asked this person, excuse me, sir, you're not sharing anything, you're not coming up with any, you're not talking. He said, the answer I got was really brought tears to my eyes. What he said is, I've been with this lab for 20 years. No one No one until now came up and asked me for if I have an idea. My job here is just to come in and run the samples. And today you suddenly come up and you start asking me for ideas. And I had many ideas, but now all those ideas are shut down because for 20 years no one asked me. So that really, I mean, it brought me tears. I said, you know, it's all about people. It's how we empower our people. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions here? Okay.
Well, this is a very good approach. My question is this value add to your customer, or is also you have to charge separately?
I would say, in a nutshell, it's very, very value added to the customer. My customers, you know, they come in all flavors, but when we provide the suggestions and solutions, when the implementation is done, and they see the productivity, the best part of my work is when I work with managers and supervisors and I see them happy. You know, I go visit them and they see, Mohammed, after you return back and we implemented this small idea that you shared, and the improvement we saw is tremendous. So that's the happiness that I get from the day. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, do we have any other questions here? We do have 10 minutes before the break. Now it's 7 minutes. Okay, I have one question for you. So you talk about improvement of efficiency or effectiveness, and you sort of mentioning about the cost reduction. But in each of your case, because this session is about rapid methods, and so when we are talking about the comparison between rapid methods versus traditional methods, of course the speed is a lot more improved there. But on the other side, people are always curious about, so how about my cost? You know, how much do I reduce? So when you are handling specific cases, what kind of cost reduction? How do you analyze the cost for each different case?
Again, this is a very good question. I'm going to actually go back to one of my slides here. I think it's the very first one. Yeah, this is good. You see this triangle over there? You know, I have 3 circles, and the blue is about the people. The green is about the process, and orange is about technology. These are 3 pieces of the puzzle. So in order for me to reduce the cost, I work on the 3 areas of operations. Improving people is good. You know, if you cross-train people, if you teach them how to do the work, if you ask them to come up with ideas, that's part of the game. The other part is how you are improving your process, which is eliminating the non-value added activity. The third one, which my friend Huang and Marita talked about this morning, is bringing in automation, bringing in new technology. So these are the 3 areas that kind of go hand in hand, and that's when you see the overall cost reduction. Just working on one pillar will not show you effective cost reduction.
Great, thank you. Do you have any other questions for Mohammed? No? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think we have 5 more minutes. If you have questions for our previous 2 speakers, this is a great opportunity to ask before we take a break and then we come back for our second part. Do we have any questions? No? Okay, I think we are all good. All right, so now let's take a coffee break, and please return to this room by 10:25. We will start at 10:30. Okay, thank you.